you have got to quickly get used to killing what you thought was going to be. You just can't get your heart attached too quickly when it's early in the stage in the process. I think you got to be willing to say no or just take it for what it is quickly. Like, all right, it's not going to work. Quit trying to beat your head against this wall and be willing to just like it's don't put on life support. Just kill it. Like it just needs to be done with. Like don't waste your energy on it.
Welcome to the Builder Straight Talk podcast with your host, Michael Creasa. Get the unfiltered truth from the trenches of construction, real estate, and funding. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.
In rescue aviation, there's a term that pilots use, and it's go, no go. And what that basically means, it's built around how much gas is there left in the tank. And when they cross this line, can they successfully get the job done? Can they rescue that person they went out to get and return safely? Or are they at that point now where, based on the fumes that are left in the tank, they have to turn around so they can get back safely? Unfortunately, in home construction today, many builders are faced with that same question, go, no go. The problem is they're so deep in the weeds, they don't even realize that they have that decision to make. In this interview, I get to sit down with a gentleman by the name of James Rigg, and he has worked with some of the biggest builders in the U.S. today. He is now the Senior Vice President of BridgeTower Homes, and that is a built-to-rent company. That's what they specialize in, built-to-rent. However, he is the Senior Vice President now of their newest initiative, which is built-to-sell, and that's called Westfield Homes. And it's really exciting to hear his take on this new initiative, because if you're a builder that's just starting out or just getting ready to scale, this is exactly what you want to hear. So some of the points that we talked about is, a project that may look good on paper crumbles when your shovel hits the dirt. How confusing speed with scale can become a very costly mistake, and what to look for. Built to rent versus built to sell, each one has its own value, but which one is right for you? How do you know when you keep pushing a deal? At what point do you stop pushing and you have to call go or no go? What are the indicators that you need to be looking for? And what does value engineering actually mean when you're trying to build something that buyers will actually want to buy? And so much more. And speaking of more, pretty please, I'm going to ask you for something. With a click of your mouse, simple click of your mouse, please subscribe, like, and share to the podcast. That's the only way we can take what we're doing here at Builder Straight Talk and get it out so more builders can share in the information that we're providing. There's no advertising here whatsoever, and that's why, once again, I rely on your benevolence to please like, subscribe, and share. So without further ado, let's jump into this interview with James Rigg. I know you're going to enjoy it. Mr. James Rigg, I'm really excited. Did I pronounce that right, by the way? Let's start off the interview by getting the person's last name right. It is Rigg, correct?
It is Wrigg, silent W.
Okay, like the game is fixed, all right? So we've already foreshadowed what the interview is going to be like. So first of all, welcome to the call, my friend. And the preamble to this, when we were talking, I said I was really excited about having you on the call because in Canada, we used to have this folk legend. His name was Stompin' Tom Connors. And one of his iconic songs was I've Been Everywhere Man. And it's just a litany of all the towns that he's been. If I were to flip that around and replace towns with experience, this would be your theme song because you have been everywhere, man. And I am really excited to unpack that because where I'm coming from, I'm looking at production spec builders. Let's put the two together and how they can take their projects and scale to get bigger. And you've been there. When they're already at that point, critical mass where they are producing, how do they get even better? How do they get more organized? So again, I'm excited to have you on the call today because I think we're going to unpack all that wonderful wisdom that you have to share. So without further ado, I think I've blown enough smoke up your ass. How about you tell us a little bit about you and your backstory, James?
James Wrigg, I'm SVP of Operations for BridgeTower and Westfield Homes. My background has been, as you said, I've done a lot of different things historically. My education is, I was actually a trained theologian at one point. I got my bachelor's in theology, minor in philosophy, and then promptly didn't use that anymore. I have been in the home building world for a little over 20 years now in a lot of different capacities and have been with BridgeTower for about 3 years and have had a great opportunity to really help scale a platform the last few years.
Okay, and just to kind of set the stage, and we will go deeper into this. So, BridgeTower is the parent company. Westfield is the what would you call it, the sibling, if you will, and that's the jump from doing built to rent, and this is now built to sell.
Correct, correct. Yeah, we've been around as a home builder for about 6 years in Texas, and, recently decided to fully jump into the for sale business as well, and so we created a separate brand to launch under there, Westfield Homes. But so it's, kind of the same people behind the scenes, just a different product and a different, end user.
So, is it fair to say Westfield is your baby? Like you're the one at the helm. You're basically the Captain Picard.
We went through a long process. It was, much more difficult than I thought it'd be. I thought this was gonna be a one and done, do it in an afternoon kinda thing, strung out for a while. We did a lot of, just thinking and a lot of renditions of it. Ultimately, my wife and I were on the way home from the gym one morning about 5 a.m., and she was asking about one of the plans that I really liked, which was called the Weston, and she's like, "Well, you like West? Like, put it with something." And I was like, "West, West, 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 Westfield, Westfield." Put it on the list, and that one is the one that just seemed to really resonate with what we were trying to capture.
Well, you got Texas, wide open fields. You got West. It seems like it's a perfect marriage, man. So
Yeah.
kudos. You've got the winning formula there. The one thing that you just mentioned earlier, and it's just rattling my brain here. So you're going to divinity school. And then, so in itself, that would be a calling. God has tapped you on the shoulder and said, "Hey, young man, this is the direction I want you to go." And it's almost like God taps you on the shoulder again. Just messing with you. I've got a different plan in store. How did that come to be?
So, man, there it was a journey, to be honest. It was truly a journey, and it was, years of my life that I could not replace, and I am who I am today for what I learned and the people I spent time with in, undergrad and grad school. I was actually in a seminary, the Oblates of St. Francis de Sales. They're a wonderful order. If you're in the Northeast, they do amazing work with, education is their main calling. They teach inner city and low income students and have some nice private schools as well. But in that journey, I just started to question what was my long-term life, and I wasn't sure that, I was Catholic, so I wasn't sure that I wanted to give up, having children and a wife to be able to make that decision, and just as I was I knew at the end of the day I didn't wanna be a bad priest, and so if I wasn't sure I was gonna be a good one, I was like, "Well, let's pump the brakes and see." And at the same time, the magic of the internet, my high school girlfriend reached out to say just, "Hi, and how you doing?" We happen to be living just a couple hours apart, and, we got together for coffee innocently and never looked back, and that just really kind of changed my direction in life.
That's what's that phrase? The Lord works in weird, mysterious ways. It's wow. I've got visions of you, all dressed in black as a priest should be, but with a nice Texas black cowboy hat. So I think you could have pulled it off, James. Could have
Yeah,
for
yeah, it would've
sure.
worked. Yeah.
So, is there anything? So in that, what do I want to call it, melting pot of experience that you had at that point? And I'm still intrigued by this. You said it made you the man that you are today, obviously business savvy and everything else. What do you think that you directly parlayed from that experience that has helped you in what you're doing today, your role as senior vice president? Is there any direct correlation from what you learned in divinity school to what you're applying today?
Empathy is where I would start. I think when you can't read the gospel and not walk away with empathy for people, and I think if you embody caring about people and you put that into everything you do, to me has been the heart of honestly success. If like I really approach things saying like I want to make something better for my consumer. I want to make my employees better. I want to meet them where they are and take them to where they can be. And I think it's, so I learned about servant leadership when I was in graduate school and in the seminary. And it's a theory of like you're leading by serving your people. That I'm here to hold them up and to build them up and to just try to bring greatness to wherever I can show up. And it's not that I'm the leader, so everyone needs to bow down to me. I'm not the king of everything I do. It's really being in the trenches and picking up people wherever they are and just taking them forward. And no matter what I was doing, when I approach people with that mentality, it kind of brings the magic out of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've got this pinned on my bulletin board. You can't see behind me, but my philosophy is you lead with the giving heart.
Yeah.
And in your case, you're doing exactly the same thing. Leadership isn't about banging your fist on the table. It's about bringing out the best in people because, again, using that analogy of a melting pot, that's where you're going to get the best too, because now everybody's participating with the common goal, and your job is to motivate them and let's get across that finish line. What can we do together?
Yeah, 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 and I think it doesn't mean I would say plenty of people that work for me wouldn't say that I'm soft by any means. I don't think it means that, you're just back there kind of like, doing it for them, all right? I think there's a balance of, when you look at, a parent, right? Like a parent is supposed to put structure and discipline and expectations to really push you to go to the next level. And so I think in leadership, there's always that balance of you don't want to stand too far away from your people. You can't put yourself on a pedestal away from your people, but you also can't forget that you need to hold everyone accountable and that you need to be the one who is really providing that thesis statement of where we're going and that vision of where we're going and giving that direction and then making sure people are headed there and that we're in line together.
I warned you at the beginning when we were going to do this interview that there are no straight lines, right? And you've just opened up all these doors. So what you just said it's in tune with what Carl Jung would have said. And part of it, like you've just tapped on it, that to be a man, to be a leader, you need to be in touch with the dark side, if you will, of yourself. And there's a difference between a weak man, a timid man, because you're useless at that point. But recognizing that you have this quote unquote dark soul and being able to harness that gives you the strength to move forward. So you can recognize it, draw forth from it when you need it in leadership. But then the other part of that coin, if you will, is you still have the tenderness and empathy, as you said. You put it all together and you become the primo facto leader.
Yeah, it makes me think of, something I say to my people all the time. It's like, "Look, are we here to win or are we here to be right?" And the difference about that is, like, if we're here to win, that means you have to have the ability to control your emotions, to not emotionally react to whatever frustrating things are in front of you. If you're in construction, everything's frustrating. Every day is a new dilemma you're trying to solve, right? But you have to have the fortitude to be able to control yourself and be able to be present in the moment to say, "Okay, how do I win this situation? What do I have to do to win this situation?" And if that means that this person needs to think they won, okay, I'm going to use some of these tactics to build up. That plans examiner was being really difficult, and it's not going to help me to go in and try and drop the elbow on him. Like I've got to build this guy up and figure out what's the right tactic in this scenario to move forward and to get success. Right.
When you talk about that aspect of moving forward and not being, I guess the word is triggered, that there is the buzzword triggered. Do you find that within the organization, then with your younger generation, is that something that you need to be conscious of? That if you say the wrong thing, they're going to curl up into a little ball with their teddy bear, they need their safe space? Or is that something you try to navigate away from right at the beginning during the hiring process?
I think I have always really enjoyed taking 22-year-olds and turning them into adults, but it's a process. I think being able to train and build your team is part of how you really create strong company culture. If you're going to be different, it's hard to take a bunch of like the same and turn it different as opposed to creating new and making different out of that. So I've spent a lot of time working with people who are in that, like, we just got out of college, we're still like they're still a kid in a lot of ways. And do they do kid stuff? Yeah, 100%. They do kid stuff, right? And I think it's having the patience to figure out where they are and how do we edge them forward to, you know, being kind of like ready to interact in the where places we need to interact and ready to do the things that they need to do. There's a certain amount of like, if you're not ready for the space, it's construction at the end of the day. And you're going to be exposed to people. I can't control the way those people talk to you. I can try to do what I can to hold standards for our team, right? But if it's like immediately somebody gets upset with you, you're going to curl up and kind of walk away. Like, well, all right, this is going to be a tough industry for you. I mean, there's always
Yeah.
friction points in what we do, but I think you've always had to teach kids. I think one of the most eye-opening things ever. I read this news article that was talking about the kids of today are just, oh, they're so weak and they're so this and they're just, yeah, they're not going to make it. And what's our society turning into? And then at the end, you find out that it was actually a priest in 1934 talking about the kids of that day, talking about the people who were about to go fight World War II, right? So I think we have to always remember that the kids of today are always they're different. I was different. I'm a millennial, right? I'm the older side of it. They had all the stuff that was said about us of being different. So I think we always have to measure it of like, every generation is going to be different. And where do we meet them? When you get to watch them grow up in front of you, that's a cool process. I've gotten to watch people grow up, you know, and that's a lot of fun. You get to see them become adults and successful. And I mean, that's just there's no feeling like that.
It's a painting with a broad brush that I think is a mistake that we make when we say, an entire generation has gone to pot or on pot, whatever. I guess the adults are doing that too. But that said, I was at TAB, Texas Association of Builders conference. It was just a couple of weeks ago, just outside of Austin. And there was a guy there. He's a baby. I'm 65. Everybody to me is a baby. Like James, I've got underwear older than you still, so that I wear. And this guy is a third or fourth generation plumber. And what he did differently, he said, okay, I've mastered, he's a master plumber, but I'm trying to encourage more people to get into the trade. So he's got his business that he works, but he's also set up his own educational school. And he's teaching young people how to get into the trades and specifically how to be a plumber. And it's thriving. So when I see something like that, as easy it is to say, oh, this lazy generation, whatever, somebody like that just sparks that
Yeah.
light of hope, if you will, that there is still potential and it's not as bad as we think it's going to be.
Yeah, I agree. I got to kind of watch a kid come right out of high school and join, the mechanical company we used as a just as a helper. He was young, he's 18, and then he starts going through their apprenticeship program, and then I got to see him become a supervisor. And then now, at my new company, we brought that company in to work with, and he's running, one of the communities. He's the supervisor for electrical in one of the communities that we're building, and so it's going out in the field and getting to see that guy. But man, I remember when you just graduated high school, you were just starting as a helper that summer, right? And like here he is as a, supervisor managing crews. And I mean, it's really cool to see what can be done with these people who are willing to get in there and really work at it and learn.
Is there anything that you're doing as a company, be it, BridgeTower or Westfield, that you're working with young people now to introduce them to the trades? So you're actually planting the seeds now to cultivate the harvest later?
We support some of the local, like, Collin College locally here in Dallas has some programs that we try to support where we can. I personally have spoke at some of their classes, just kind of talking about construction management, and they have a campus here in Dallas that does a lot of great work in that space. We hire a lot of people that are new. We give them that chance to learn this side of the business, the management side of the business. We're just not old enough, big enough to be in a position to really spend a lot of resources on it, but it's something that we try to help out where we can and try to support where we can and, be a active participant in the community.
Okay, so you said old enough. Let's peel back that pedigree a bit. How old is BridgeTower? And then
Yeah.
obviously you're the baby because you've just started this Westfield. So in the greater scheme of things, give us the backstory.
Yeah, so Bridge Tower actually there's a lot of pieces to Bridge Tower. We do a lot of things underneath this roof. So the core of it goes actually back to 2013. George and Jackson, the partners, they started just as acquiring scattered single family homes. We actually still own one of the first houses we bought here in Dallas and have the same resident that lives there. When we bought the house, she said she wanted to live there forever. And we said, well, that sounds like a good idea. And it's kind of a cool, feel good story, right? They started in that space and, started doing build to rent communities in 2015 using kind of outside, using like a local builder to accomplish that for them. And then in 2019, they decided to start BridgeTower Homes, to build homes for their own portfolios, to be able to start building build to rent communities. 2019 was quite a year to start a home builder. There's something kind of big happened in 2020, something about COVID or a cold or something, but it was a rough time to get into the business. So they learned a lot of the lessons real fast and real hard about just what it's like being a home builder. Yeah, I had the opportunity to join them in early 2023. So my background was with Perry Homes, and I kind of cut my teeth on the production builder world coming up in the Perry system. And I got the great opportunity to come over and bring that knowledge to Bridge Tower and really take our kind of ragtag team of people and turn into like an efficient home builder that we could scale and grow. And then from that, be able to launch, really diversify our business model. So, all right, we're good at doing this now. What else can we do with it? And then we've, continued to scale from there.
So how did that come to be? Were they looking for you or you were looking for them?
I think, I was open to opportunities. I was open to opportunities. Opportunity calls is something that was worth checking out, right? It was, I'm at my heart of hearts, I'm more of an entrepreneur, right? And so the chance to go from, I was a medium fish in a big pond, and I went from being the biggest fish in a tiny pond. But, with
This
the chance to just like really take the reins and run with it.
this opportunity call should probably be a tattoo that you've got somewhere because it's like divinity, tap on the shoulder, girlfriend, tap on the shoulder becomes wife. Perry Holmes, tap on the
Yeah,
shoulder.
it's
Here I am, senior vice president. Man, you're
yeah,
going where the wind is taking you.
yeah.
So phenomenal journey. Let's dive a bit deeper into what BridgeTower is doing. So talk to me like I'm six, and obviously it's probably an obvious answer, but the model that's behind the built for rent, unpack that for me.
So, build to rent has become a great solution to, housing need just, across the US, and it provides a different rental experience. So, and when you look at changing tides of like, as far as like affordability is an issue and that limits some home ownership, and then just a desire to rent a little bit longer because you're uncertain of like, hey, am I going to live in this area a long time, or do I want the, what it takes to own a home long term? Or surprisingly, what we've seen a lot of is we've seen people sell their house and move into one of our rental communities because it, was just they're kind of tired of dealing with the maintenance and all that. So build to rent has become kind of a different experience. And Bridge Tower specifically, we really focused on what we call a move up renter, right? So we build a very traditional single family style home. Some townhomes, some detached, but our communities look like it's just a traditional single family community. You drive in and you wouldn't really realize that it's a rental community, and all of that is, financially, it's a lot like multifamily, right? So like we're creating a rental asset and it's kind of financed like multifamily. And then you can participate in the space in a lot of different ways. We're an owner operator, we're a property manager, and we're a builder, right? So those are all different things within the build to rent space. We're a home builder, but we're not really a home builder. That it took me about 6 months being here to figure out like, oh, we're actually like an investment company that creates assets that is meant for, to serve people in the rental capacity, right? Just like apartment complexes, we're creating communities for people to have that, have that experience of home ownership. And especially we, our I think our average age of our resident is, yeah, about 39 years old with like 1.5 children, right? So it's a very down the fairway clientele, and they want to have more space in an apartment complex. They want to have a backyard. They want to have room for a pet, and we're able to, serve their needs and provide them something that is, a little different and unique, and it's worked out well.
I'll come back to that. I want to expand on that, but the one thing you said earlier. So, is it fair to say when you talk about amenities, would this be similar to condo living? And I don't mean high rise, but in the sense that you've got common areas, that you've got community center, gym, that kind of thing?
It depends on the size of the community. So we have some communities, we do a lot of infill locations as well. So like we did a community in Arlington that was, 48 townhomes in a very established space. You can't really put an amenity site in there. I think in there we put like a dog park and a little playground set. We try to put in something for the community to have some space to enjoy and meet outside. And then we've done larger communities. We've done, 142 houses or 256 houses. Those type of communities will have a full amenity setup, amenity center, pool, gym, kind of like the whole kit and caboodle. So it really depends on the size and the type of project and what makes sense for that area.
So, you're building homes, rental homes versus, so a community of homes versus a high density cluster of apartment buildings.
Yeah, yeah, it
Okay.
really is just a different. And when you look at, like, the trajectory of life, so, like, you go to college, and at some point in college, you probably end up in an apartment, right? Or you end up in some type of rental, and often it's into an apartment, and then you leave college, and likely you're ending up, like, you're renting an apartment, and at some point, you just don't wanna have to walk up 4 flights to take your groceries inside, right? And you're like, "Man, I wish I had a garage. I wish I had a little bit more space. I wish." and there wasn't historically a lot of options between that, apartment life and just buying a house. And so that's where build to rent has come in as like, this is the density starts to really widen out. It's not just apartments all packed together. You get into cottage product, and then you get from there into, like true detached, single family living. But you get the ownership of a company that is really invested to be there. I think so. I Something that resonated with me when I decided to make the jump over to the space, because it was a big question of like, do I want to go in and make build to rent? When my wife and I were moving to Texas, we already have 4 kids, right? So we needed some space, and we weren't in a position to buy at that time. We just weren't sure we were wanting to buy it, but we were nervous to rent a house with just a random landlord because your experience is very hit or miss. You really don't know what you're signing up for. You have some great stories and you have some poor stories, right? And to me, I bring that into the product we build, and the way we manage our property is like we're providing a consistent experience. We're a company that, that's what you get from an institutional owner is like somebody who cares, right? And that there's a like we could, I mean, at nothing, we care about our image, right? You can actually internet shame us. You can't internet shame a single one landlord owner type community. And so that's why I think the experience is just so diverse versus providing a very consistent, resident experience, being a larger owner of these assets.
Do you find, I don't know if you've tracked this, but again, I'm going to go back to that word community that you use. It's a community versus cluster where everybody's in a tiny little box. And I think this, reading your mission statement, this is your focus to build a quality home that is a community. Do you find that the people that are renting, do they stay longer
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
average?
Yeah. So I think our typical tenure is right about 3.5 years right now, which compared to an apartment that's more like I think 1.5, 1.75, something like that. So like we have longer tenure in a lot of our communities. And we'll even see people move, where we have a community where we maybe have mixed density, where we have townhomes and detached. We'll see someone come in and initially move into one of the townhome units. And then when their lease is up in a couple, like, maybe a couple of years down the road, they decide to move into one of the larger detached units. Like they've evolved just within that same, community. But it's we see in our communities people take ownership of it in a way that's similar to your traditional single family neighborhood because we encourage that. We see some of our people kind of like dress up their landscape bed in front of their house. We see like you can tell they're emotionally invested in this experience. Even as a builder, we have people who are pre-lease, like the home is still under construction and they've leased this home. They know that this is gonna be one that they move into. And they're stopping by like just like a homeowner stops by to check in. Like, hey, did the tile go in? Right? Like we didn't expect that experience. My team wasn't really ready for that, but we were ready to pick up and say, like, well, let's go take a look. Let's go check it out and serve these people wherever they're coming from.
Do they have any say in terms of the, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say amenities, but in terms of the
Like
appointments that are,
selections. Or
yeah.
yeah, interiors or anything. So we don't offer any options or anything like that. We have different color packs that we put together. So they have a say in terms they have some things that they can choose between as far as like this unit has this color selection package, this unit has this one. So we'll create a few different packages that are, maybe a little bit different style or a different feel. So they can kind of pick between like based on which unit has which pack, they can kind of go in that direction.
And do your tenants have the option when they move in, again, we're talking something relatively new, what you're doing, but when they move in, if they want to change the colors, it's on them. They can repaint, or are you very strict in that respect?
I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, it's like, they're gonna have to return it to the color it was, like, when we
Okay.
take the house back over, or that's, just so it's, like, we don't provide them any kind of allowance or anything like that, but we see people personalize their house, and then we see and then they come in when they're ready to move, and they're like, "Hey, what was the wall color?" And we'll tell them, like, "Hey, go get this paint if you're gonna repaint it," and, just, put it back to the way they found it kind of, mentality.
Let's put you back in Perry Homes for a bit. You're at the top of your game, and Perry Homes is a production builder, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. On average, how many homes were they putting out a year? Just
Uh,
rough
they
numbers.
they do about 3,500 to 4,000, something like that.
Okay. So there you are. Let's say instead of going to BridgeTower, what if there was that other tap on your shoulder, opportunity presented itself and you're thinking, I want to get into this build to rent space, but I want to do it. I don't want to partner with somebody. I don't want to get into somebody else's business. If you were going to do that now based on what you knew from Perry Homes, and I'm coming at this from, let's say we've got spec builder, production builder, and they're thinking about the same thing. What would be the mindset that you have to have, and what would be the basic steps that you have to take to start moving forward?
I think a big decision point is, how do you want to operate in this space? Are you wanting to, and I see builders do, because there's really two main avenues that you go. Are you trying to build, a rental portfolio that is mailbox money, that has tax advantages, or that you're going to sell at some point as an asset, like as a home builder owner? Hey, I'm going to build this community, and this is a long-term capital play to generate revenue and have some mailbox money off of this, kind of provide that cash flow. Or are you trying to show up as a GC to build for other owners and developers? And that's where, so they're like multifamily, is often like the capital that owns the asset is rarely the group that built the asset. And so built to rent's the same way, where a group of people come in with the money and they'll say, okay, we need to find someone to hire someone to build this community for us. And kind of the colloquial term for is like fee building, or being the GC for a project. And they come to a home builder and they say, okay, we want to hire you to build this project for us. And then there's a lot of contract negotiation that goes into that and how that contract is set up. There's a lot of different ways to set that contract up. But so it kind of starts with like, are you looking for an avenue to increase production? Are you looking purely just to get more numbers and to get like immediate cash flow off of like a revenue stream? Or are you looking for a longer term, capital optimization? Like you have equity that you could put into, creating a community that has a long term, payoff on it. And I think that decision is really driven by, make sure if you want to build and own a community, fully understanding what that means and how long your equity is going to be tied up for. I think that's where home builders, you're turning pretty quickly. Whatever your cycle, if you're 120 days, 180 days, 270, whatever it is, it's still relatively quickly that you're building the house, you're selling the house, building the house, selling the house. When you sell the house, when it closes, you get the cash back right away and you just continue to recycle. When you build a rental community, you're putting in a few $1 million of equity and you're not going to see that back for quite a while. And so it is tied up there for a long time. So I think it's making sure you understand just, the cycle, the life cycle of a rental asset.
So it would be an asset class that would be long term versus, as you said, we're just building something for production, selling, moving on. So when your capital is tied up, let's talk about that for a bit then. You have to be well funded, or you've got investors, partners. What would be, before you put the shovel in the ground, what's that capital stack? How do you put it together?
Yeah. So typically, you're typically looking at, at a GP LP, equity partnership. They come together. So GP being the general partner, the smaller, usually the home builder is the GP, right? We're putting in anywhere from 3% to 10% of the equity required for a project. You're going and finding LP equity. And LP equity, the limited partners, they're the big equity check, but they are not responsible for the execution of it. They are just kind of overseeing it. And then when you look at the waterfall, the payout, right? The eventual, like kind of like, okay, this is the amount of money we made. The GP has an opportunity for a lot of upside if the project performs really well. And so like you form this, this JV partnership with a some kind of large equity group. If you're doing a small community, you could do all the equity yourself. But I mean, if you're looking at, not a lot of people can cut a $10 million check. Like that's just a big check to cut, right? So and then you're going to have debt, some type of debt stack based on just what your equity, like how much you're trying to finance. There's a lot of ways to go at that. You have, and there's pref equity in there that you could bring into the stack. For sure you're going to want, you're going to need some type of, development loan, construction loan. And so you're going to put together your debt stack to acquire and execute the project. And then that's going to roll into some type of stable long-term financing after you've stabilized the project.
Typically, are you guys building for your own portfolio, or are you being approached by a syndicate, an investment group that hires you to do it for them?
So there's a lot of different types of investment groups. We have historically worked with both ends of the spectrum of the, a retail raised kind of small check investor put together a pool of money to go execute the project. And we've worked with publicly traded REITs, institutional capital that, are they're cutting large checks and they're looking for programmatic relationships. Those groups want service in different ways, and there's different ways to interact with them. So we've done a little bit of everything. We raise funds internally as well. We have obviously a lot of deep background in the space. We're well respected, and so people kind of continue to bring their money back to invest with us in our projects because we've historically, delivered good returns, and we take care of our investors. We want to make sure that, we really look at the project from, we're serving the investor. Part of my kind of like mission statement for the team is we have a lot of different clients, and we take the responsibility to figure out how to serve each one of them the way they need to be served. And that's whether that's a resident, a homeowner, an investor, a sponsor. It's on us to figure out how do we serve them, how do they need to be served. And when you approach your relationships with in that way, they just are typically very positive and reinforcing it, and they continue long term.
Well, they realize that you're partnering with them in every sense of the word, that you're either getting into this together long term, or you're building it for them, passing it off to them, but still your name's on it. So you've got your reputation at stake.
Yeah,
So either way, you've got to follow through on what you said you're going to do.
yeah, yeah, 100%.
Is there, before you get started, is there, you said you've done infill. I don't want to say magic formula, but is there something that you guys are specifically looking for when you're going to do a build? Or are you being approached again by the investors and say, okay, we've got the land, here's where we want to build? Or is it a combination of both?
As a fee builder, sometimes we're approached or we meet a group that already has the land and they have a plan and they need someone to build it. So that's a service we launched about 2 years ago where we're building for other developers in the space. Typically for our own projects, we're on the acquisition side. We're fine and we're looking for parcels that make sense, and depends on our LP partner, like what they look for. Everyone has a box, right? They all have a box that they're looking to fill, right? And we go to understand their box, and then we look for opportunities for the things that fit in their box. And that box is typically defined by school district, household income, population density, commutes, employment opportunities. Our version of build to rent has definitely been much more, we're first circle, second circle in the suburbs. When I talk about, like, every city has a hub, and then they have the spokes and the circles that go out, right? A lot of your entry level first time homeowner type product, your Horton, your Lennar, a lot of that stuff gets built on second ring, third ring, fourth ring, right? Out here, way out here. For us, build to rent doesn't work very well out there. We want more population density. We want more household income. We want a more established kind of space for the clientele that we're looking for. So we're typically a couple circles in, and we're dealing with the kind of the smaller leftover chunks, not we don't typically take down 200 acres and try to parse it up. We'll take down anywhere from 5 to 30 acres. And, that's in a really good location that has a lot of strong demographics behind it that we know is going to be successful.
So when you do the takedown, are you doing it right from the beginning, like acquisition of the land, taking it through the process, entitlement, and then doing the build? Do you do it all?
We are truly vertically integrated in that way. We have entitlement all the way through property management. So we take an empty field and we take it all the way to stabilize, like leased up and property management. And we have teams inside that go through each one of those phases and are able to issue. So we pick up projects at all different stages. We're small, so we're flexible, right? We can step into a lot of different places and pick up a project at a different stage and kind of move it forward, but we also have the ability to just start from the very beginning and work do the entitlement work.
Are you guys still subject to the same, what's the word I'm looking for, vulnerability? You're looking for land. There's obviously competition that is going after the same land. They want to build homes that they can sell. You want to build homes that you can rent long term. Is it a struggle to have that advantage that you see something first and you can jump on it?
I mean, having an acquisition team is vital, and having a good acquisition team is the difference between, good and great, right? We have a great director of acquisitions that, he knows everybody. Land acquisition's all about like, he just knows
Yeah.
everybody. Like, you just
Yeah.
put a pin in the map, and he's like, he can tell you like who lived there in 1943. Like, he knows that stuff because he spends a lot of time on it. We don't often compete directly with home builders for sale because we're taking down these smaller chunks, and home builders are often chasing bigger parcels. At least the home builders we compete against are typically chasing bigger parcels that have a little bit more longevity to it. and we're typically dealing with, the harder parcels to figure out. Like if when development comes through the first time, if it didn't get built the first time when development was initially going out that way, there's typically a reason, right? There was a sewer capacity issue, there was a tree issue, there was a topography issue, a dirt issue. There's some reason that it was hard to develop when the development first went through that area. And so now what we unlock, the real value add is, we go and we have a triangle and we turn it into a circle to fit it through the circle hole. And that's really unlocking that. So we don't often really compete directly against the for sale buyer for it. It's really, can we unlock it? We compete against other people in the build to rent space or the multifamily space for land acquisition, but we actually try to partner with home builders to complement each other of, hey, we have a larger piece. We can't take this all for rent. Like, could we cut chunks of this off and like we could sell you finished lots, or we could partner together to take down this larger type parcel?
Well, that makes sense because you've created, I don't want to say competitive alliances, but in effect, cooperative alliances because you're focused on one part of that equation and you're helping them out with their part of the equation. Has there ever been, like everybody wants to think the road to success is a straight line and you woke up one morning with this beautiful plan, everything executed, and you got there? Has there ever been one of those moments when you thought, man, I wish I didn't get out of bed this day? Because the project that you thought was going to be so phenomenal just turned out to be a dragon's nest.
I think you have got to quickly get used to killing your what you thought was going to be. You just can't get your heart attached too quickly when it's early in the process. I think you got to be willing to say no, or just take it for what it is quickly. Like, all right, it's not going to work. Quit trying to beat your head against this wall and be willing to just like, it's don't put on life support. Just kill it. Like, it just needs to be done with. Like, don't waste your energy on it. Now, I think when you get deeper in it, there's definitely been moments where, we're in the throes of wrapping up old projects and starting new projects, and we've got just, 400 homes under construction, and we're building and scaling a system at the same time, right? Like, it's, I joke with the people like, we're flying the airplane and it's not fully put together. I said, dude, I'm barely flying a frame of an airplane and we're still trying to build this thing. Right. And there was times and moments where I really would look up and say, I don't know if I'm doing a good job, because there's no way to know in the middle of the race if I'm actually doing a good job or not. I don't know. And I really just had to put my head down and just keep grinding. Just keep believing that, I mean, I know we can figure this out. I know we just have to keep going, and we'll get to some light eventually in the tunnel.
You used a flying analogy in rescue, be it helicopters, they have a go, no go zone where there's a certain amount of fuel. They get to that point and they have to make the hard decision. Do we keep going knowing that we're not going to come back, or do we turn around? Is there a no-go zones? You've kind of impacted that sometimes you're flying by the seat of your pants, but is there that moment or what are the elements that would lead up to that moment when you say, "Okay, we're done. No go. We gotta move
Yeah.
on."
I think there's a lot of, layers of no-go moments. So, like, when you're first looking at any parcel, there's, like, basic data that you're pulling up to look for to say if this is even something we would entertain, right? If your schools are all 1s and 2s, there's no reason to chase it. It's just not gonna be something that somebody wants to fund because it's a challenged area in that way. Or if there's a bunch of topography, it's very, very difficult. Topography is very difficult to work with, very expensive. Or if there's a bunch of rock, we deal with that in Texas intermittently, where and then as you get down into the southeast, down into Austin, San Antonio area, you run into, different versions of that they deal with it all day long. But in Dallas, we don't, and it's yeah, I think because we build throughout Texas, we have to have different lists based on the city we're looking in. Because the way you do something in Austin, the way you do it in Houston, the way you do it in Dallas, you might as well be in different states. I mean, we do things totally differently. And I think that is actually a really big element of success is you have to be willing to know what you don't know. I'm not the expert. So when we started a project in Austin, I went down there and met with our vendor pool and I was like, all right, guys, I don't know how to pour slabs in Austin. What am I looking at? Explain it to me. Now, do I know how to pour slabs? Yes. Have I built hundreds and thousands of houses? Yes. But I think it's approaching it with the humility of like, but I've not done it here. And I don't know what they know about this specific location. So what can I learn And in that particular deal, we ended up saving ourselves about $4 million of dirt work because they walked in and said like, "Oh, you guys are gonna build pads? This is awesome. We don't build pads in Austin. We work with the topography the way it is." And it was like, "Oh, okay." Like, that changes everything, right? So I bird walked off of, the original question there, but I think it is, your list has to be very specific to where you are, and then you have to really approach it with some humility of, like, you don't know everything about an area and use your resources that are available to you.
I think that's when you allow ego to get in the way and you're gonna get hurt every time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you guys members of the Texas Association of Builders?
Yes, yes, we are.
Yeah, that would be a great place because I found, again, a plug for them when I was out a couple weeks ago. You wanna talk about friendly. Like, it's just Webster's friendly, and it's like a picture of the Texas Association of Builders, and they just made me feel so at home, and being the token Canadian, a member of Texas at the San Antonio level, yeah, man, they couldn't have been more welcoming, and, when you're saying, "How do we pour here?" It seems like that would have been a natural call to make because there would have been a handful of builders that would said, "Son, here's what you don't wanna do."
It's the truth. I mean, connecting and networking with other builders in the space is, I think, there's just a lot of value to it. And I think in today's market, it gets even harder to do that because, like, it's a tough housing market right now. I don't think there's any lie about that. And we really are competing against each other in a lot of spaces. And I think that's where you have to recognize that good competition is healthy, and if we're all approaching this with honesty and integrity, you know what, we're going to do the best we can do, and we're a little bit better off working together than if we're just really trying to undercut each other all the time. So I think those. I was actually just chatting with a director of purchasing for another home builder last night. We're texting back and forth. We know each other, and he like, hey, I've been getting hit with fuel surcharges. Like, who are you guys using for this trade? Like, we're gonna shop around a little bit. And I shared a few contacts, right? Because it helps. I want to keep my trade base busy as much as I can, and if it helps him out, I would ask the same of him. If he's building in this area that I'm not currently building, hey, do you got a painter in this region that I could reach out to? Right. I think there's a lot
Yeah.
of value in those connections.
I think that element of friendly competition is good because it keeps you both sharp, but it's friendly
Yeah.
competition, and the pie, relatively speaking, is big enough that you're not gonna both gobble it down. Why not? So, in Michael's philosophy, if you and I are fishing, James, and we caught the same fish, instead of killing each other in the boat, it's okay. You get the fire going, I'll get the frying pan, and we have dinner together.
Yeah.
That's how
Yeah.
that works,
Yeah.
you know? You mentioned the word value, and it's a buzzword that I'm hearing more and more in construction, value engineering. Is that a truth or an illusion? And unpack that for me.
I think it really depends on who's doing it. I wish I could find a better term for it. I think we value engineer in a way that I'm very proud of because we're really trying to generate value and we're not just trying to reduce costs. And I think that's where cost reduction and value engineering sometimes get used, intertwined with each other, and they really are different things. And when we, are approaching a plan to value engineer it, it's really just trying to make sure that we are being as efficient with our resources as we can, that we're providing something that people want, right? And we're just taking advantage of all the levers we have that we can pull. Like, are we wasting something somewhere? Do we have an inefficient design, in some ways? Like, is just what can we do that provides a better experience at a better price? Or more longevity or better durability or just, where can we maximize this asset and not just approach it from a what can we strip out of it, right? Like, I can strip stuff out of it. If I just stop putting an interior in a house, it'd be cheaper, right? I don't know that I would say that that's value engineered, right? But where can I really provide value to the consumer? And that's we get excited about that, especially with our Westfield product that we're putting together. Is we're excited to bring value to the consumer that in a way, in some ways, that's a little bit different than some builders are doing.
Okay, so that was your subtle way of tapping your foot on the floor and say, when you can ask me about Westfield. But before I do that, I've got one more question. And talk to me like I'm 6 years old here. I won't be offended. That's one of my favorite lines Denzel Washington used to say. Talk to me like I'm six. You've got this model that is predicated on we got to get houses built. People can't afford to buy them today. So we will rent to them and we will build a superior product that they will feel proud of to call home, right? We're not packing them into boxes. It's something you instill that pride of ownership almost as if they own the home. And it's an investment class. Is there a hybrid? Is there a way of somehow being in the middle that you're solving that problem of the housing crisis and it's unaffordable at the moment? The buzzword, again, since we're using buzzwords, obtainable housing is what they like to say. Is there a hybrid that it could be rent to own? That the buyer can get involved in the process and pay so much down, and that rent then goes towards potentially a down payment within a time frame. And if they don't hit that time frame, the money isn't lost anyway. It just goes back into rent. Is something like that already there, or is that something that you guys ever thought about playing with?
There have been a few groups that have attempted something like that. It's actually financially a very difficult model to execute, and it really needs to be supported, by probably some kind of hybrid, relationship between, a municipality or state government that's going to provide some financial support to it. Because financially, it's hard to support it because the asset you're creating, you're immediately kind of selling, but you're not trying to maximize the sales price, right? And so you limit a lot of like your ability to make returns off of it just because of like kind of the undercurrent of like we're trying to create housing that is more attainable and you're going to get rid of it right away. We have some conversations with some major municipalities that we're actually working through right now. I'm not going to name the city, but it is exciting. They're looking at like, okay, well, if we contribute the land to the deal, could you guys, bring this type of program, or if we give you some tax credits to offset some of these impact fees, could we look at this? And we're excited to get to explore that with some partners because we want to serve different clients everywhere we can. At the end of the day, I want to bring housing to market. I don't know why, I just have always loved housing, and I want to bring it to the market wherever we can, in whichever capacity we can. And so it's just a matter of finding out and figuring out, getting creative, and finding the right people to work with to be able to support that.
I can that's the key, the right people, especially municipalities. There are many of them that are sitting on these wide tracts of land they don't know what to do with.
Yeah.
But it's like any partnership. It's a matter of marrying the right person, otherwise you're gonna be in that relationship from hell. And government and the hell seem to be synonymous with one another. I don't care how good you were in divinity school, but I think that's a serpent you just don't wanna tackle, man.
It is tough, but you know what? The government's made up of people, right? What
Yeah.
is it? The government's made up of people, and meet that person where they are. And we've walked into a lot of meetings that started with no, that got to we'll see, that ended in yes, because we weren't willing to write them off because it's still just people, and people want to be treated with respect, and they're open to you if you're willing to treat them with respect.
Ah, man, that's what I like about you, James. You've got this optimistic attitude. I feel like the kite that is pulling on your string, and it's, "No, Michael, let's just pull you back in a bit. There is hope still for mankind." Good on
I'm
you.
trying. I'm trying.
Let's do the segue. Tell me now about this Westfield project, because in my mind, I'm thinking you guys have dialed in the perfect formula. I think, on the pre-call, we were talking about the Big Mac. You've got all the ingredients there. People want it. They're buying it. It's selling. And then you go, "Hot diggity, now that we've perfected this, let's do something completely different." So now you're going into the build to sale class. How did that come to be, and how's that working out for you?
I think it really is a natural partner to our for rent operations in terms of, to have a home builder, you need some stability. Build to rent, just like any asset class, it isn't stable flow production, right? It's very peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys. And build to rent, your location of community, you're not typically wanting to build another 100 units next to the 100 units you just finished. You're always all over the place geographically, right? And so you take down 4 or 5 projects a year, and then those go through your pipeline, but you hit these big peaks and valleys. But for a home builder, it's difficult to keep your operations stable when you don't have that stable start and completion schedule. And to complement that, the for sale space, you're able to be a little bit more even flow, and in what you're producing because you're it's just a different cadence of how that build goes. So that's business wise, that's one way in which it complements each other. We also I'm passionate about housing, and I come from the for sale space. I definitely, always was kind of dropping that in there of like, well, this parcel doesn't really work for rent, but it worked for sale. Right? It's we're looking at a lot of land of, what could we do with it? Where can we generate value? And I'm definitely like, let's climb the mountain, let's go do it kind of mentality, and let's do more, let's do more, let's do more. And being able to expand the for sale operations gives us that opportunity to, more land makes sense for us because we can use it in a lot of different ways. And so it just gives us a diversity and an ability to pivot and do things that not everybody has. So just it makes us a strong buyer because we have just deeper pools of like ways in which we can use something. And yeah, so it feeds a lot of needs there.
So did the I'll say founding fathers of, they'll probably be offended that I call them founding fathers of BridgeTower, even though they look like they're 16, and I mean that in a nice way. When they met you, they brought you over obviously to fulfill a need that they had. This idea of build to sell, was that a pony waiting to be ridden? Or was that something that you introduced, or was it a combination of both?
I think it was a combination of both. I think they would probably say I'm pretty persistent in terms of, yeah, I was definitely always ever present talking about how we could, and trying to educate them on how that market works because it really does work differently. Both of them have very strong finance backgrounds and very strong, investment backgrounds, and home building is it's more emotional, right? It's more people driven. It's more there's just a lot to it that I think that I was able to help them kind of like wrap their head around in terms of like how does this space work and what makes sense to and where do we want to be in it, right? Like what type of builder do we want to be? Because when you're starting from zero, there's all these decisions that like if you don't make the decision, it gets made for you, right? De facto. Like you just show up and all of a sudden that's what you are. And we've tried to be very purposeful about what is the optimal position that makes sense for us and that is going to really resonate with our company, resonate with our people, resonate with our investors, and going to be successful for us to execute.
When you say they admired your persistence, is that a Texas way of saying you were a burr under their saddle? Is that kind of a
I sometimes I'm tone deaf to people being tired of hearing what I have to say, but I don't. I think it's always been very very collaborative and they've seen it. But I'm definitely always pulling at the chains of like let's go. I had to learn the greatest thing I learned from them was risk management and having a true appreciation as a home builder, especially the last since the GFC. It's very easy to think you're great when it turns out you were just lucky because you're just like the home market overall has been relatively easy to be successful in since what 2011, especially in Texas. It never got as bad in Texas. 2011 to 2022, 23, it wasn't the hardest thing to be good at. And so I think that creates a lot of you take people who are already pretty bullish and then you give them the 12 years of stability and they just turn into just like, oh, go do anything anywhere, right? Just go make it happen. I think what I value that I've gotten to learn is really appreciating risk and understanding how to quantify risk and understanding that things can go wrong. You can supposedly can fail. I'm still not going to totally take it, but and just figuring out how to plan a business with that type of mindset of you no one thing should ever be in a position to sink you. You never want that type of exposure in one position, right? And so how do we build and scale a business while always protecting the heart of it?
a quote from Warren Buffett's partner? This is our book from Sound Capital put out, and I'll send you a copy, Built to Prosper.
I
It's all
love it.
about financing and scaling. But this is your fault, young man. You made it. It's remarkable how much long term advantage people like us have gotten by trying to be consistently not stupid instead of trying to be very intelligent.
Yes, that one of we have a great balance in the leadership here. One of them, the first question they ask, and jump to is what can go right, and the other one, the first question they ask is what could go wrong. And when you bring that in and you're able to put that with a lot of expertise and put that in a machine that just is very consistently showing up to do the job, we've scaled quickly. I don't think we even fully appreciate how quickly we've scaled from a builder that didn't exist to a builder doing, 400, 500 units a year, right? And it really is a remarkable thing that we've been able to pull off already.
This project that you're working on now, how big will that be in terms of units?
It's only phase 1. It's a master plan community, Meraki that we just, launched in. So we have 31 lots in phase 1, which isn't a very big position for us, but this is a multi-phase. I think it's like 11 phases as a project. It's like eventual build out is 2,500, 2,700 homes. TELUS Group is a developer. They're just absolutely amazing developer here in DFW. They've done some communities that are truly like iconic. I think Windsong Ranch being one of them in Prosper, to get the opportunity to get into one of their communities and kind of we're on model row with everybody else. We're a real builder now. I like to say. I mean, it's us, it's Highland Homes, it's Perry Homes, it's American Legend, it's Bloomfield, and little old Westfield Homes, and
You're
here we
playing
are.
with the big boys now,
Yeah,
son.
we're
Playing with
main
the big
stage,
boys. Yeah.
right?
So now, is it all hat or is it all? What? How does it that expert all hat or all cattle? I was bombarded with Texas slogans when I was there, or and I can't think of them. Let's go back to this. So now that you're in this fray now, which is you're building to sell, how are you? We talked about the capital stack in the build to rent. How are you doing that now in this? Is this your money? Is it investor money? Bank money? What's the stack to put this together?
Yeah, so we recently formed a JV partnership with a Japanese firm, HHP, Hanku Hashin Properties out of Osaka. We're their first American partner in the for sale space. We partnered together with them to pursue, this really build out our for sale capacities. That's what what they're driven to do. We were introduced to them and went through a kind of a courting process of getting to know each other, and then ultimately it made sense to work together to bring the finance in to fund this whole thing.
So they're your funding arm. You don't have to rely on banks, hard money, or anything else. They're the
They're the
source.
equity arm. There's always debt that needs to be debt's
Yeah.
always a piece of that pie. We work with some regional banks. We work with a lot of different debt providers. I think debt's an interesting space right now for sure.
Here's my subtle wink to Sound Capital. We'll talk about that after the. Anything that I've missed that you want to tap on, James?
Boy, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground already.
Okay, I got something I call it rapid fire, and I don't want you to overthink this. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. First thing that pops into your head, just fill in the blank.
All right,
Right? So you ready?
I think so.
Okay, put those foot in the stirrups, young man. Here we go. Most builders underestimate the impact of.
Estimating,
Okay, the biggest hidden cost in construction today is
not knowing what you don't know.
value engineering fails when.
You don't appreciate what value is.
Good. Speed becomes dangerous when.
Lacks the proper checks and balances.
Okay, the most expensive mistake builders make when scaling is.
Fail to manage their risk.
Okay, wipe the sweat from your brow, young man. This next round is easier. When I finally get a rare hour to myself, the thing I enjoy most doing is
Golfing.
golfing. Okay. The one place that helps me reset and think clearly is.
Vacation with my wife.
Good answer. If she's listening, good answer. A book, movie, or quote that stayed with me is.
This is terrible. It makes no never mind.
Oh,
Nicolas Cage, Con Air. I don't know why. It was the first time I heard a Southern accent. I'm a Midwestern, and
yeah.
and I tried to use it embarrassingly amongst a friend group, and they all looked at me like I had horns growing out of my head. But I was like, "It's a cool way to say something.
Yeah,
It makes no
yeah,
never mind."
get him his medication. On a side note, you just, again, you opened the pathway here. I can't remember Craig's last name. I interviewed him a while back. So he now runs one of the biggest drywall manufacturers in the US when they hired him. But he was the crew chief for Nicolas Cage's yacht and worked with him, I think, for 5 years or 10 years or something ridiculous like that. And stories to tell. But the bottom line was he said he was the most generous, authentic, and nicest person he's ever worked with.
Well, that's good.
Nicolas Cage, I thought was kind of cool.
That is.
Okay, 2 more and then we're out of the park, young man. I can see the lights of the runway. If someone were to get to know me, they would be really surprised by the fact that
Study philosophy.
okay, well, the priesthood, that's a good one. Last one. What a wonderful and thoughtful gift. As I unwrapped the package, to my delight, I found a
A cure for Fragile X.
Fragilette. What's that?
Two of my children have a genetic disorder, which is Fragile X, and so it affects the X chromosome. It creates an extra protein that kind of like just it repeats repetitively, and it just gets in the way of the synapses being able to connect properly. And there's no cure for it. They just, it's kind of like you manage the you just manage behavior and conditions and whatnot. But there's a lot of work being done on it, but they just haven't been able to find a cure for it.
Wow. I wish them much success so they can find a speedy solution to it. James, I had a lot of fun doing this. Once again, anything that I missed, anything you want to add?
No, this was absolutely great. I really appreciate having the opportunity to visit with you. I feel like we could do this every week. It's a good time.
I've one more question. I'm not going to let you off the hook. And this goes right back to where we started divinity school. And so I think you'll appreciate this. I haven't asked this question in a long time. And so this is something that I pray doesn't happen for a long time. Emphasis on long time. But one morning you wake up and you're dead. And you're thinking that's not a good way to start the day. And then as you start coming to your senses, you realize you're in line and there's St. Peter. You're at Heaven's Gate. And being that we're living in this technologically advanced age, there's St. Peter with his iPad and he's scrolling through. And he's looking at you, points at you and says, come over here. And now you're standing beside St. Peter and you realize he's playing little vignettes of your life story. And some make him chuckle, some make him kind of frown. And as he's going through this, he stops. He stops and he looks you right in the eye and he says, James, not today. Not today. There's something you haven't done yet. What's that something?
I have more goodness to bring to the world. It honestly ties to my heart of what I care about. I think housing is so fundamental, and I have great aspirations for being able to provide that to people who really need it. And there's a lot of steps to get to where I want to be for that. And I think it would be that I believe I'm capable of doing pretty amazing stuff, and it's part of what I'm called to do as well.
I think we go back to what we started with, that opportunity calls you. You're at bat and you're just waiting for the ball to come across the plate. My friend, I want to thank you. I'm going to say that with all sincerity. My newfound Texas implant friend, thank you for taking time out today. Let's just say to be continued.
Thanks for listening to Builder Straight Talk. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. Until next time, keep building smarter. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.